Today we have Aya from FalconX. They'll be moderating the panel alongside Esteban from TRM, Alex from Nansen, Eva from The Graph, and Michael from Fireblocks. And I'll pass it over to Aya.
All right, I think I'm audible. How are we doing?
Great.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Imran, so much. DeFi Alliance and the Blocks for hosting us today. We have some awesome folks on this panel, so I'm super excited. I know we got a chance to talk about risk management on the centralized side. We're now going to dive into that on the DeFi, decentralized side. So first off, my name is Aya. I'm at FalconX. We are a prime brokerage for institutions servicing cryptocurrency, and delighted to introduce Eva from The Graph, Michael from Fireblocks, Esteban from TRM, and Alex from Nansen. So why don't we maybe start with a 1 to 2 line introduction, and then we can dive right into some of the questions we have today. Eva, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, thanks, Aya. So my name is Eva. My background is in traditional finance management consulting, and I defected to Ethereum about 4 years ago. And since then have been hopping around and found my home at The Graph, which is a data indexing layer for all things Web3. And so I currently lead the Graph Foundation.
Esteban, you look like you're ready.
Thanks, Aya. Hi, everyone. My name is Esteban. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of TRM Labs. TRM is a blockchain intelligence company. So we analyze blockchain data to help financial institutions and governments detect cryptocurrency fraud and financial crime. Our mission is to build a safer financial system for billions of people. Thanks so much.
I'll take it. Sure. My name is Michael Shaulov. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fireblocks. So thanks for having me. I'm not coming from the financial space. I spent about 2 decades in the cybersecurity and started Fireblocks about 3 years ago. We built a custody and settlement infrastructure for institutions that are working with cryptocurrencies and digital assets. Currently serving about 450 different institutions. And super excited to be here because over the last 18 months or so, we've done a pretty significant push into DeFi and enabling all those folks working with DeFi. So yeah.
All right, just me left. My name is Alex Svanevik. I'm the CEO and one of the co-founders of Nansen. Nansen is a blockchain analytics platform for crypto investors. We have enriched blockchain data with more than 90 million Ethereum addresses tagged up. And our customers use Nansen to discover opportunities, perform due diligence, and also defend their portfolios with real-time alerts. My personal background is in artificial intelligence, and I also did a few years in management consulting before joining the crypto space in 2017.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. So to kick it off, my first question for you all is, as folks think about service providers in general, especially coming personally myself as a service provider, what are some of the features and services that you provide that, let's say, some of these, especially specific to DeFi, some of these companies can't necessarily do in-house, or perhaps there's some gaps in the way they're thinking about doing it in-house that you all can really bridge that gap. Esteban, you want to start with perhaps more on the data side?
Sure. So as you're thinking about engaging with DeFi, whether that's a financial institution looking to engage with these protocols, or perhaps you're thinking about building your own protocols, the issue of risk management is really important. It's usually kind of the top of the to-do list as you're thinking about getting started. And specifically around how do you manage the financial crime risks? How do you manage the sanctions risk in these protocols? That's what we provide. We provide B2B software that helps provide visibility into the financial crime risk of any given protocol, so that you can make not only great investment decisions using something like Nansen, but also make sure that you are managing the associated AML CFT risks. Fundamentally, the reason why folks partner with companies like TRM to do that is the building it in-house is quite complex. There's DeFi is open source, so anyone can spin up new protocols. These protocols exist on any number of blockchains. These protocols support thousands of different assets. And so kind of the size of the problem is one that it makes sense to partner with someone that's fully dedicated on analyzing that data. Also, the risks are different. You think about the traditional typologies that you would, a compliance team might focus on, things like structuring or layering or other things. In crypto, not only do you have new types of risks, things like smart contract risks, DeFi exploits, rug pulls, all of that, but the way you monitor for those risks are also different, which requires new tooling.
Yeah, that's great. How does, similarly, the Graph works on very similar problem. How would you say at the Graph Foundation that you are tackling that, and how does that problem also differentiate? Esteban, you touched on this, but from the CeFi or more traditional sense, what new problems arise in DeFi that a service provider can help?
Totally. So at the Graph, we believe that decentralization is the future, and that means that every part of the stack and even the way that you retrieve data from the blockchain should be decentralized. And so the problem we're solving at the forefront is that pulling on-chain data is really challenging. So if you're an application developer building a DeFi app like Uniswap, and you want to show those trade volumes on your application so your users can trade, it's really difficult. It requires you building a server in-house. It requires a lot of expertise in DevOps, constant maintenance. And so what we realized at the Graph was, similar to Ethereum, creating decentralized networks of providing these services is actually more efficient, and it creates a lot more, space for innovation. So, with the Uniswap example, again, Uniswap currently uses the Uniswap subgraph, and that's an open source API, meaning anybody else that wants to query the Uniswap smart contracts can also look at that DeFi data from Uniswap. And that means that anybody else who's building, an app on Uniswap or another DeFi protocol can access that data much faster than they would otherwise, where otherwise they might have to rebuild that server, do a lot of redundant proprietary code. But now we can actually build much more, easily on top of each other's work. And what that also allows is for DeFi apps to be, not to be taken down. So whereas, the Graph, it started as a hosted service where we hosted a lot of the data, in a centralized manner. The goal was always to decentralize. And the reason is, we can't maintain uptime. That's kind of the central point of failure argument. And so it's actually in the best interest of DeFi users, especially ones maybe are high frequency traders or, really need that real-time data, to rely on a decentralized network where you have nodes that are willing to serve your data at any time.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for walking us through that. Alex, how are you thinking about it, specific to this topic, and, the new obstacles or gaps that come in DeFi?
Yeah, I think a key word here is speed, right? This is an industry that moves extremely fast, and being able to keep up with it, even for companies like Nansen, is actually challenging, and it's literally the main thing we do. So we have people with great internal tools monitoring what's happening with different smart contracts, where the capital is flowing, where the smart money addresses are making their investments. And frankly, being able to keep up with that tempo is very, very challenging, and something that you need dedicated efforts to do. So I think, buy versus build is always a question in any industry. I think when it comes to DeFi, the key challenge is speed, that you have to actually keep up with that tempo. And the flip side is also that there's an opportunity cost if you try to build something yourself. So those are some of the points where I think if you're looking to get data on DeFi, you're going to have to do a lot of catching up if you try to build something in-house.
Yeah, pivoting a little bit, Michael, especially since, you guys started more on the centralized side, you're making this massive push at Fireblocks into DeFi. How are you seeing the two compare? And are there any similarities, differences in the two products and services across the different protocols?
Yeah, so I think the main similarity, there are two main similarities, right? The first similarity is that people want to make sure that their funds are safe, that they, they go to sleep and they wake up and the funds are still there. But I think that what Fireblocks built from day one, right? While it was for the CeFi, is really getting settlements and the ability to interact on chain directly into the blockchain in real time, right? That basically was our bread and butter. There was a view that this will be useful one day for more than the CeFi space, and I think that they came in some ways actually sooner than what I've expected. So I think that inherently those things do propagate to the DeFi space, right? First and foremost, security is paramount. Security is critical. We've seen a lot of the incidents. There've been a few incidents in the DeFi space that were related to the smart contracts, but still there were people that were basically phished and spoofed, and people holding their wallet in the web browser, and all those things definitely need to be solved. And the second thing is that I think that the nature of the platform and the product in DeFi, unlike in CeFi, where I would say trading and settlement are sort of segregated, are actually two different activities. In DeFi, they are being brought together, right? So our unique position over there and our ability to actually do it, to control the wallet and to control the transactions in real time, making our platform even more useful, for DeFi. There are clearly a variety of adjustments that we had to do, and there are a pretty significant roadmap that we need to execute on, but the underlying technology and sort of the engine behind Fireblocks is really suitable for DeFi.
That's helpful. That's a great segue also into our next topic or question around, I really want to focus on personas. So I think in terms of the audience that we have listening to this today, more institutional based, who are the target personas that you are focused on today? And then who is, or even who are the personas you service today? And then who's the target persona? Is it institutions? Is it someone else? Perhaps it's protocols and devs. And then what is it going to take for us to get there? I think, Michael, you touched on a few of those topics, and Esteban around risk management and security. Yeah, if we could go around and maybe kick it off. Esteban, you want to go first?
Sure. We help organizations make decisions using on-chain data, focusing on risk management. So that's everyone from helping regulators make decisions about how to manage the risk of market manipulation, to law enforcement managing the risk of cyber attacks like ransomware, to helping financial institutions manage the financial crime risk and detect things like money laundering and sanctions exposure that they might have on their platform. We also partner with cryptocurrency businesses. So, if you're a crypto business, how do you screen an incoming Bitcoin deposit to make sure that it's not proceeds of stolen credit cards sold on the dark web? Those are some of the things that we would do. And finally, we partner with protocols. So if protocols are looking to ensure that their network is protected and safe from this type of activity, we surface those insights to them as well.
Eva, you want to go next?
Yeah. So, the graph has quite a few roles in the network, and I think we're still at this sort of infrastructure development phase where we are still targeting people who have heavy DevOps experience to be an indexer, subgraph and smart contract developers to actually start building out this Web3 space with the more open source APIs, the more development. But we are starting to, tap in more to our delegator community. And so that would be people who want to participate in the network, but don't want to run a node themselves. And so they can delegate GRT tokens to indexers. And to me, this is a great way for, retail folk, institutional to get involved in the data economy, because you can actually provide security, and benefit the network without having to be super technical or run a node.
And quick question for you on that. What is on the institutional side, is there like a educational gap that you've seen today, or you think the ramp up has been relatively smooth? And what types of institutions are there? Are they like let's say the FalconX clients? Are they like the billion-dollar asset managers? Or are they more, let's say, like crypto native? How far have we gone?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix because I think it depends sort of on your education of, crypto and staking in general and your familiarity with staking as a concept, the idea of putting your capital to work. We've seen obviously a lot of crypto funds, a lot of angels get involved, but recently a lot more delegation occurring to some of our larger indexers, which points to a lot more retail interest. So I encourage, if you're not comfortable, with the topic or, with staking, I suggest going to maybe one of the larger node validators. But ultimately, I hope institutions run their own nodes. All it takes is maybe, a few months hiring the right people, and then you can run nodes across many different networks and participate in, this ecosystem.
Super interesting. Alex, what about you? What are the current personas that you're focused on today and then target?
Yeah, I think the simplest explanation I would have is our target customer is effectively any market participant in crypto that manages at least $100,000 US. That's just based on our pricing. It doesn't really make that much sense to pay for our product if you have a smaller crypto portfolio. But it ranges from effectively the sort of mid-sized and larger retail investors who actively trade in crypto, investing in tokens, NFTs, using DeFi protocols, etc. And it goes all the way up to the largest market makers, the largest crypto funds in the industry. We are actually building out an institutional team these days, but we're still in sort of the, I would say, product market fit stage where we are speaking to different customers, trying to understand their needs. But the primary focus with Nansen is to help people succeed in the markets. So that means, effectively getting an information edge and making sure that you can discover opportunities, you can perform due diligence on different digital assets, and you can defend your portfolio with real-time alerts that we offer through our platform.
Great. Michael, what about you? You have a pretty diverse persona base.
Yeah, we do. I had a board meeting earlier, so that was basically 2 hours.
Perfect.
That was basically 2 hours of conversation around this topic, specifically around how we view the propagation of DeFi. And clearly as Fireblocks, we sort of start from we actually resegmented internally the market. We don't call them anymore crypto native, right? Because I think that 2 years ago it was very clear that there are people that are crypto native and there are basically traditional FIs. I think our entire internal categorization of the market has changed, right? So you have people that are basically in the trading business, right? Like you guys are, that essentially it's either prime brokerage or trading firm or so on, but basically is trading. There are B2C businesses that are basically fintechs, and I think that today it's actually really hard to say what is the real difference between someone like BlockFi and someone like Revolut, right? Which 2 years ago it was very clear, or Square. So all these categories sort of merging together, and then there is a real question: what will be the difference between them and Wells Fargo in 2 years from now, right? So and we operate across all those three segments. The really interesting thing is that clearly the people that we developed the DeFi for, DeFi capability for, were basically the trading firms, right? That were already active in the CeFi market. Some of them opened funds specifically to focus on DeFi, but that was the sort of the initial target audience. Interestingly enough, right now, the majority of the volume that is going to DeFi through our platform is actually the fintechs. It's already outside of because of the yield, right? There is a really interesting yield opportunities that it seems to be that people that are already more into the mainstream are unpacking. And probably the most fascinating conversation is really that I'm seeing those huge asset managers from Wall Street, $40 billion, $50 billion, that a year and a half ago, the only thing that they were thinking about is how do I buy Bitcoin, or should I buy ETH? They didn't even understand what ETH is, right? In terms of what's the difference between Bitcoin and ETH. I actually had to basically explain there is no finite supply on the other protocol. Right now, they're actually looking to hop directly into DeFi. They're basically passing on the CeFi stuff and going directly into DeFi because they understand that, one, the alpha is there, and two, that this is the real infrastructure of the future, right? And this is quite exciting, right? Now, with all that being said, I think that the regulatory issues are still there, right? So it's not the uncertainty, uncertainty really sort of prevents some of those players to move in. And this is some of the things that we are working to resolve with folks in both in the blockchain analytics space, and also by working directly with the protocols to really create either permission access, permission pools, but essentially starting to move into a much more institutionalized, I would say, compliant way of operating with DeFi. I think that what we're doing over there is we're actually sort of abusing the system a bit, right, to basically bring those players and make the regulators happy. Whilst we do that, we will have enough firepower to actually go and fix and take it back a bit more into the permissionless and more transactional system as we like, right? Because I'm, very much bullish on the way that DeFi is working today.
Makes sense. So pivoting a little bit in terms of how you all are structuring, and I know all of us kind of work in the data space, and I know this is a question everyone loves, but what are some of the challenges around both indexing and structuring on-chain data today? And then Esteban, specifically for you, just trying to answer some of the questions in this chat, specific to how you are doing some of that on-chain analytics for protocols. Maybe we can kick off with that and then dive into, some of these more data challenges that I think, Michael, tie into some of the regulatory issues, that, have come up, especially with Gary Gensler's message this week.
Sure, happy to. The AML for DeFi is probably the most exciting thing that's happened to AML in 2 decades. It's really interesting set of questions. How do you, the way we think about AML traditionally is that you had centralized financial intermediaries that would be monitoring activity on their platform and would screen customers as such. So what happens in a world where that financial activity is disintermediated and it's happening through software in the cloud? It's a really exciting question. There's basically 2 ways to approach it. One is you as a participant. We work with asset managers, with hedge funds, and trading firms that are looking to engage with DeFi. And because we risk score liquidity pools, we can actually provide insight into which DeFi protocols, are high risk from a financial crime perspective or AML perspective, which ones are lower risk, and how does that risk change in real time? And that is what gives them kind of the analytic superpowers to be able to engage with DeFi directly. On the protocol side, we can help. We integrate on the front end to help screen addresses in real time for risk exposure before allowing a user to engage with the protocol through the interface. So it's akin to if you believe that these protocols will grow, there will continue to be centralized applications that layer on top of the protocols, and we partner with those applications to do the type of traditional KYC AML screening that you would expect. We can also work with protocols directly to give them the analytics to more proactively understand the risk exposure on their network and investigate activity if there is anything that's particularly high risk.
Great. For the graph specifically, I'm curious, for on-chain, what are some of the structural, issues or indexing issues with on-chain data? And it almost ties into our first question as to why it's so great having these service providers do it on your behalf.
Yeah, the current problem we're trying to focus on is indexing performance. So, we've gotten the product market fit with subgraphs. It's really excellent for developers to obfuscate, that back-end work, but they also need that, service time, that, real-time data to ensure whatever, trading derivatives you might be doing, the end users are getting that data as fast as they can. And so the next year, we're really focused with, several different core developer teams to get that indexing performance up to speed that would be comparable and even more high performant than a centralized service. And the logic there is if you have a network of indexers that at any moment will serve your queries, that means that you aren't relying on a central service to service that. And so by actually growing in numbers and creating a network effect, an open source network effect, you actually can provide your DeFi users, institutions, end users, whatever it might be, a much better service than you would with a centralized party.
That's great. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think there are a few interesting challenges when it comes to indexing and structuring on-chain data. First of all, you have to get the raw data, right, from a node. And so the graph is a great project, for example, for doing that if you're a developer. If you're an analyst and you want to, say, do SQL queries, my co-founder, Evgeny, created Ethereum ETL, which allows you to basically ingest data from Ethereum and run SQL queries on a database. And if you even don't want to interact with this open source software at all, you can go straight to like Google BigQuery and start querying, real-time Ethereum transactions right away. So actually, I would say the sort of the vanilla on-chain data is highly accessible today. A few years ago, it was not. It was quite complicated. But the more interesting challenges that I think we spend a lot of time on is, number one, parsing out DeFi-specific transactions. So, for example, from the Ethereum transactions, you want to figure out, is this a DEX trade? Is this someone providing liquidity to a protocol? And so there's a lot of sort of domain knowledge that goes into that, and you need to have a scalable data infrastructure to handle those DeFi-specific transactions. I think the last challenge, which is where we spend the most effort at Nansen, is attribution. So trying to figure out, what are these different entities on the blockchain? Because anyone can see on the public blockchain that, A sends money to B, but you don't necessarily know what entity A is and what entity B is, right? And so that's where we spend a lot of time, and there's no silver bullet for this. You have to basically approach it with many different methods, many different techniques. You have to, in many cases, scrape GitHub to get smart contract labels and things like that. In other cases, you have to literally read press releases of investment rounds to figure out which VC funds might own which wallets. And you, of course, have to build out heuristics that can tag up things like Uniswap pools and other types of DeFi protocols. So I would say there's, getting the raw data from the node is one challenge. Being able to read out the DeFi sort of native transactions is the second part. And then attribution, which means connecting all this stuff to the real world through entities.
Great. So I see Imran is ready to kick us out very shortly. We could probably spend hours on this topic. So I want to thank you all for joining, I think, on the back of the Ethereum conference this week, and so much going on. I've known all the folks on this panel for a while, so we've come such a long way. Alex, to your point, things have changed quite a bit in the last 2 years. So huge thank you for everyone speaking on this panel. And thanks, Imran, for having us.
Thank you, everyone.